When I was 9, I used to think every neighborhood had its own sounds. Ours had the ice cream truck in summer, dogs barking behind fences, basketballs bouncing in driveways, sprinklers ticking in the evening, and after dark, footsteps on the roof. The first time I heard them, I was lying in bed with my window cracked open because the air conditioner in my room was broken. It was late August, the kind of hot night where the whole house felt sweaty and slow. My parents were downstairs watching TV, and my little sister Emma was already asleep across the hall. I heard 3 slow steps above me, then 2 more, then silence. I remember sitting up in bed and staring at the ceiling. Our house was 1 story in the front and 2 in the back because of the slope behind the yard. My room was under the higher part of the roof. I told myself it was a branch moving in the wind, but there was no wind. A minute later, I heard it again. Step, step, step. Not scratching like an animal, not the quick, nervous sound of a raccoon. Heavy, careful, like a person trying not to make noise. I ran downstairs and told my dad someone was on the roof. He muted the TV and looked at me for a second. "Probably a raccoon," he said. "It sounds like shoes." He smiled a little. "Raccoons always sound bigger than they are." Then he unmuted the TV. That should have been the end of it.
Of the footsteps came back the next night, and the night after that. Always after 10, always slow, always above my room first, then over Emma's room, then across the kitchen, then over the garage, like whoever it was had the same route every night. After a week, I stopped telling my parents. Adults have a way of making you feel stupid without meaning to. So I started listening. I learned his pattern. He came on clear nights. He came on humid nights. He came when the neighborhood was dead quiet and all the porch lights had gone out. He never came when it rained, and he always stopped moving if someone outside turned on a light. At school, I asked my friend Nolan if he had ever heard somebody walking on his roof. He laughed so hard milk came out of his nose. But when I told him I wasn't joking, his face changed. He looked down at his lunch tray and said, "My cousin in Denton said there was a guy like that in their neighborhood." "What guy?" Nolan shrugged. "A man who walks on roofs." I waited for him to laugh again. He didn't. "He doesn't steal anything," Nolan said quietly. "He just watches through windows." That scared me more than if Nolan had said he killed people. A burglar takes things and leaves. Something that only watches, that stays, that's worse.
That night, I dragged my desk chair over to the window and waited. Our street was a curved little cul-de-sac outside Knoxville, Tennessee. The houses all looked kind of the same. Beige siding, dark shingles, narrow yards, little porch lights glowing like sleepy eyes. From my window, I could see 3 rooftops clearly. Ours, the baker's house next door, and the empty rental across the street that had been for sale all summer. At 10:43, I heard the first step above me, then another, then another. I leaned up slowly and looked outside. At first, I didn't see anything. Then something moved over the baker's house. Not climbed, not crawled, walked. A tall man crossed the peak of their roof like it was a sidewalk. He was too thin. That was my first real thought. Too thin. Even in the dark, I could tell his arms looked too long and his shoulders were too narrow. He wore what looked like a long coat, or maybe clothes hanging loose off his body. He moved with his head tilted slightly down, like he was listening to something inside the houses. He reached the edge of the baker's roof, and then he stepped across the gap to the next house. I remember my stomach turning cold. No person could do that. The houses were close, but not that close. He should have slipped. He should have jumped. He didn't do either. He just stepped over empty air, like the space between rooftops wasn't there for him. Then he stopped. I dropped below the window so fast I hit my chin on the sill. I stayed on the floor, holding my breath. Above me, the footsteps stopped too. I don't know how long I stayed there. A minute? Maybe 5. Then I heard 3 quiet taps on the glass. Not the window in front of me, the one behind me. My bedroom had only one window. I still don't understand that part, but I know what I heard. 3 taps, right behind my head. I didn't turn around. I didn't move at all. Eventually, the footsteps went on, across the roof, toward the garage, then gone. The next morning, I told Emma not to look out the windows at night. She was 6 and still believed anything I said if I used a serious enough voice. "Why?" she asked. "Because there's somebody outside." "A robber?" "No." That was all I said. For the first time in my life, I think she understood there are things worse than robbers. A few days later, Mrs. Baker's cat went missing. Then a week after that, the Hendersons woke up to muddy footprints on the hood of their car and one long streak across their upstairs window, like somebody had dragged their hand through the dust. Mr. Henderson told everyone it was teenagers, but no teenager leaves a handprint with fingers that long. I saw the photo on Nolan's phone. There were 5 fingers. I counted them twice, but they were long and jointed wrong, bent like spider legs.
That Friday, my dad finally heard the footsteps. I know because he came into my room at around 11 without knocking, his face pale in the hall light. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I nodded. He looked at the ceiling. Step, 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 right above us. He grabbed the flashlight from the laundry room and went outside. I followed him to the back door, even though he told me to stay put. Our backyard sloped down to a little strip of trees behind the fence. Dad shined the flashlight up at the roof line. Nothing. He circled the house once, then twice. Nothing. But while he stood in the backyard, Emma started screaming upstairs. Mom ran to her room first. I got there right behind her. Emma was standing on her bed, crying and pointing at the window. There were 2 wet footprints on the roof outside her room. Not shoe prints, bare feet. Long, narrow, with toes too far apart. Dad came in a second later, saw them, and just stood there. Nobody said raccoon after that. Mom called the police. A deputy came out near midnight. He walked around the house with a flashlight, asked if anyone had been pranking us, and wrote something in a little notebook. He kept looking at the roof like he didn't want to. Before he left, he told Dad to keep the windows locked and install motion lights. Then, very quietly, like he didn't want me or Emma to hear, he said, "If you hear it again, don't go outside." Dad asked him why. The deputy took too long to answer. Then he said, "Because I've had 3 calls like this in the past month." That was when my mother started crying. Bod bought motion lights the next day. He put one over the garage, one over the backyard, and one by the side gate. That night, we all slept in the living room, or tried to. The TV stayed on with the sound low. Emma slept curled against Mom. Dad sat in his recliner, pretending not to watch the windows. At 10:43, the first motion light switched on. The backyard exploded with white light. Nothing was there. A few seconds later, the garage light came on. Then the side gate light, one by one, around the house, like something was circling us. Emma woke up when the first footsteps hit the roof above the living room. Everyone heard them. Nobody moved. Step, 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 across the ceiling, over the kitchen, then above the hallway, then right above us again, stopping in the center of the house. A long silence followed. The TV flickered, the picture bent with static. Then, from the hallway came my father's voice. "Can one of you help me out back?" Dad was still in the recliner. I looked at him. He looked at me. Nobody spoke. The voice came again, closer this time. "Hey, opened the back door. It sounded exactly like him. Same tired voice, same little cough at the end of the sentence. Emma buried her face in Mom's side. Dad stood up slowly and took the fireplace poker in both hands.
From above us, something moved. Not walking now, crawling. The ceiling creaked. Tiny bits of dust drifted down from the vent. Then the voice in the hallway laughed. It wasn't my father's laugh. It was too breathy, too stretched, like somebody wearing a laugh instead of making one. Dad went white. The back door handle began to turn, slowly, once to the left, back, then once to the right, but the deadbolt held. Mom whispered for us to get down. We crouched behind the couch together while the footsteps resumed. This time, they moved toward the front of the house. We heard them go over the porch roof, then stop. Nobody breathed. 3 soft taps came at the front window. Then a voice very close to the glass said my name. Not yelling, not whispering, just saying it the way a teacher might during attendance. Eli. I don't remember deciding to look. I just did. I rose up enough to see over the back of the couch. There was a face at the front window, long, pale, smiling. Its eyes were too dark to see. Its mouth was too wide, and its cheek was pressed flat against the glass like it was trying to fit into the house through the reflection. It lifted one hand and waved at me. Mom pulled me down so hard my elbow hit the floor. Dad shouted something I didn't hear because Emma was screaming again. The light motion outside all flashed on at once, then off, then on, then off. Then everything went quiet. No footsteps, no voice, no tapping, just the sound of the TV hissing. We stayed on the floor until morning. When the sun came up, Dad opened the front door. There were muddy footprints on the porch roof under the window, and on the glass itself, right at my eye level, was a print from a hand with 6 fingers. We moved out 2 weeks later. Dad said it was because he got a better job offer in Lexington, but even at 9, I knew that was a lie adults tell when the truth is too ugly to say out loud. For a while, I thought it was over. The new house was a 2-story brick place near a church parking lot. Different state, different street, different roof. The first month was quiet. No footsteps, no lights turning on, no voices. Emma started sleeping through the night again. Mom smiled more. Dad stopped checking the locks 3 times before bed. Then, one cold night in November, I woke up to the sound of footsteps above my room. 3 slow steps, then 2 more. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, unable to breathe. A minute later, my phone lit up on the nightstand. I hadn't touched it. There was no number on the screen, just one new voicemail. I didn't want to play it, but I did. At first, there was only wind, then the sound of shoes scraping on shingles, then a voice, warm and cheerful, exactly like my father's, said, "Eli, come see who's on the roof."